Welcome to Pathways to Stillness. I'm Dr. Gary Irwin-Kenyon, a gerontologist and Tai Chi instructor. On this show, my co-host Vicki Hogarth and I explore how the practice of stillness can transform the way we see aging, death, and loss, and how it can help us understand our lives as a story.
It's a joy to be with you again, Gary. I'm taking a lot from just being a part of the show and doing the exercises that we do every week on the show and the ones that we give to the viewers to take home. I've really found it is enlightening, and it really does help you navigate your own life and sometimes realize some of the things, maybe resentments or challenges they aren't willing to put in a different light. It's really helping me unpack those and see my life in a different way.
Thank you, and I enjoy doing it with you and also learning from the folks who have been writing in to tell us about their experiences.
And every week, Gary's been providing an exercise for viewers to do at home. You can also do it along with us if you're watching the show for the first time right now. But what I'll do, Gary, is have you read the short exercise we left viewers with last week on page 22 of your book, Pathways to Stillness, which is available online on your website, Amazon, at McGuire Chocolate here in St. Andrews, and a number of other places. I'll let you.
Sunbury Shores and Indigo. So this was another Explore Your Pathway exercise. Is there a change occurring in your life to which you might apply these restoring insights that we talked about last week? Give yourself permission to relax into stillness, let go, and allow the change to become one part of your pathway and of who you are.
So I'll read you some of the responses we had come in. This one's from Phil. He says, living in recovery has shaped me in ways I never expected. My past with addiction is a part of my story, but it's not all of who I am. It's helped me become stronger, more self-aware, and more empathetic. I can still live with that truth and use it to lift up others, and there's almost nothing I can't overcome now. So, wonderful. Really beautiful way of seeing it as a positive strength.
Yes, and it points to the 12-step program, among other things. I'm not sure if that's the one she's referring to, but that 12-step program is wonderful for embracing these issues.
The next one comes from Cindy. She says, going through a divorce broke something open in me. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of a future I'd imagined, a version of myself I thought I understood. But as painful as it was, it also gave me space to find my own voice again, to rediscover my worth, and to learn how to stand on my own. Divorce is now part of my story, but it doesn't define me. It's one chapter in my life that's still being written. A chapter that taught me how to set boundaries, how to forgive, how to grow, and most of all, how to begin again. And then we have Steve said, losing my job shook me to the core. It wasn't just a paycheck, it was my routine and my purpose and my sense of stability. For a while I felt uncertain about who I was without that role, but with time I realized that while my work had been a part of my identity, it was never all of me. Being forced to step away opened up questions I'd been too busy to ask and room I didn't know I needed to explore. I've learned resilience, humility, and the quiet strength that comes from starting over. That loss is still a part of me. It sharpened my edges and made me dig deeper, but it doesn't own my future. This one comes from me.
I appreciate the courage that folks feel comfortable to say what they feel and experiences they've had to share with us. It's so inspiring to all of us.
It really is. So much so that I wrote in this week. This something that happened about 10 years ago to me. Losing a dear friend was one of the hardest things I've ever faced. It shattered my life the life I knew, and forced me to rebuild myself piece by piece. That kind of loss doesn't go away. It becomes a part of you. But over time, I've learned that while grief may walk beside me, it doesn't have to lead the way. My love for my friends still lives on, not just in memories, but in the strength I've found in myself and in the compassion I've gained for others, and in the way I show up for life now. The loss will always be a part of me, but it isn't all of me. If I can carry both the weight of that grief and the light of what I've learned forward and use it to help others feel less alone, then I know I can keep going. And in doing so, I honor the friendship we shared while continuing to grow the person I'm still becoming. And I know there was a while where I wrote it in because when I was reading your book, there's things you realize that you kept with you longer than you needed to. And I did resent the loss of my friend because he was such a special person to me and he did so much for others that I couldn't really accept why the world would take him from not just me, but everyone. And it's still a work in progress to accept that grief and to move forward. I know that he would want me to.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, his daughter contacted me this year and wanted to know more about her dad. And I got to share some of my stories of him and my memories with her, and that was really special too. It was so unexpected and out of the blue to hear from her. And she's
wonderful.
in California. She tracked me down, and we shared stories online about what her dad was like. And I didn't realize, in being able to share those stories with her, how much of the joy he brought to my life I still carried in my heart.
Wonderful. Somebody wrote somewhere that a person who's died, as long as I'm alive, they're still there. That's a nice way to think about it.
So what are we going to talk about on this episode? How do we move forward with our stories and our lives?
Yeah, we've been talking about this restorying idea of being able to change your story. So it's kind of a continuation of that. We'll talk a little bit more about meaning. Meaning is, I think, is an important concept, and Viktor Frankl is one of the go-to people for that. He developed the concept of not just meaning, but logotherapy, which is kind of a meaning-based therapy. And it's not the primary paradigm in mental health care still, I don't think. We tend to look at medication or straightforward counseling of different kinds. But I think sometimes our issues can be physical in our brain, and we need help with that. Sometimes they're functional, and we need a counselor. But either a good counselor or somebody else, philosopher maybe, can help you with the lack of meaning. And I think in our world right now, meaninglessness is an epidemic. There are many, many of us whose issue really is a lack of meaning. So it really should be included in the standard way we look at our own life and professionally in mental health care or medicine. So meaninglessness itself can be a problem. So how do we go about, I want to talk a little bit more about how we go about finding meaning. So there's a chapter in the book called Finding Your Way. I'm going to refer to it a little bit because I can't remember everything I wrote down. So the idea is what can we do? There's meaning, and I also think there's a close connection with meaning and stillness. I think if we find some source of meaning in our lives, it helps us have more peace and more stillness that way. So it can be helpful. And I guess the first thing to do if you're going to approach any of these issues, as I've emphasized all along, is you need to relax. So whether you have some sort of meditation or breathing or walking or just sitting still in nature, if you have something that can just sort of tone down the monkey mind a little bit before you look at these different sources of meaning. And then just kind of explore with imagination how some of these or one of these might help you to find a new source of meaning, or there could be a source that was very strong as we age. It's they say, one of my colleagues wrote somewhere that aging is a good monastery, and he means by that monks and nuns have to let go of everything. Their home, their money, they're trained to live according to the life of, if it's a Christian, it's Jesus, or Buddha, but they're trained to let go of everything. And in a way, aging is taking a lot of things away from us. It's giving back something too, which we're trying to include, but it certainly challenges our sources of meaning that might have worked for a long time. So just mention a few ways to look at, or a few themes that people generally find sources of meaning. Significant others. So it could be family members, those who are here, and as we just mentioned, those who are not here physically anymore, but still very much with us. Friends, health, legacy, or Erik Erikson, the lifespan psychologist, calls it generativity. That usually when we get to middle age or in our older age, we may think about leaving something behind. So we might have been more focused on ourselves or our own family, career, all those things. And as we get older, we might think of, what am I leaving behind? So that could be for your family, but actually in my family, we say we're not sure anything will be left because we don't have a lot of money to begin with, and we don't know how long we're going to be around. So we tell our kids that are older, that whatever's there will be yours, but we're not sure what that will be. So it's kind of on that level. Or also just, there are many opportunities for leaving something behind in our culture, our climate, the world. Some of those issues that right now are extremely acute for most of us, that we seem to be going in a direction that many of us would say is not the right direction. We're going backwards as we try to go forward in making a better world for all of us. So there's legacy or generativity. These are they're just guidelines. They're not kind of, me telling everybody what they should be doing. They're just guidelines, and I think a lot of it has to do with your own personality and value system, that certain one of these pathways would connect with you and you'd want to take it further, and others might not. For me, I think my lifelong, at least since I was a young adult, one of the big sources of meaning has been what I'm doing now, which is Tai Chi and philosophy and studying. That seems to be, I am a bit of a believer in rebirth, and sometimes I think I was put here to do these things. This is what's stays most comfortable with me, and I seem to understand things. Not that I am the perfect person, that we're all trying to be or whatever, but it's just an intention or an attraction that gives me a lot of peace and stillness. Health, of course, is a big source of meaning for people, and that we don't always have control over that, but I guess we're trying to learn here that we can't control it, but we can have some influence on the way we look at what's happening to us with regard to our health.
We had this week in studio a man worth mentioning on this show, Sid Carnigan from St. George. He has ALS. He has been living with it for 6 years. His wife Karen came with him because he speaks limited words. He's still mentally all there, but physically it continues to be less and less things he's able to do. And yet he's become this light and force for ALS to bring attention to it. And he's found purpose in what some people, I think, would see as a death sentence.
Yeah.
He sees as an opportunity to bring awareness and also fundraising dollars to look for cures. And I was, I made it to the end of the episode before I started crying. But it really does teach you that, for all that any of us go through, there are these situations that many of us will face, and it really becomes up to us what perspective we take. And that's not something you can always easily do right away, but it's something you can work through. And I think that's why what you're doing here is so important, because I want to be someone like Sid. I don't know what's coming on my path. I know I am the author of my story, but I know there will be many obstacles that maybe change the chapters. And meeting him last week was really special, because it showed me that even in a situation that in my head would be worst case scenario, here's someone living this life and bringing so much to as many people as he can.
I know I talk about Viktor Frankl maybe too much, but
no, he's great.
He's great. And he says, he talks about suffering the way you're thinking of it, that if you can suffer well, you are a light, or you are, he doesn't use exactly that, but you are able to be an inspiration and a reference for all of us. So that's a wonderful story, because that's a heavy one. And 6 years is a long time to be with it. If I can mention a couple of others, work or career is a major source of meaning for all of us. And it's something, as if not younger, then as we get older, that source of meaning can disappear or really changes. So that's another one, that important one. Altruism or service to others is a big one. To me, if you're interested in this, just using your imagination or looking around and listening to what people say or what's on the internet, there's so many roles or places you can do that, to just help out in a small way. Not everyone is a joiner, joining a club or anything like that, but in some way, I think service it makes us feel good. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm referring sometimes to the 12-step program, because I'm familiar with that to some degree. And that's a core part of what you do as an addict or an alcoholic, is to look at yourself and then help others. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes go to meetings and I hear them very often say that service part of it keeps them going as much as the meetings do. That when they're not feeling good about themselves, just making the effort to reach out. And I must admit, sometimes I'm not as good as I could be about that. I think I'll check in. I just sit down and think, who's in my space, and just reach out to that person. It could be, the other day it was my nephew, and I just gave him a phone call, and he said, at first I think he's kind of said to himself, what are you calling me for? I said, I'm just checking in on you. And it was really made me feel better, and hopefully him too.
Service can be how we define it, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just a couple of others. Religion or spirituality that we've kind of touched on, whether you belong to an organized religion, which for many people is a way to have a community too. Or if you have a more secular kind of spirituality, you can still have what the Buddhists call a sangha, or a group of kindred spirits of some sort that you connect with. Zoom is a miracle for that, because we have access now to all kinds of groups anywhere, anytime.
That's a good point you make for people at home that might look for a support group. Sometimes in a small community, it's hard to find one that's physically in your geographical area, but especially, and then post-pandemic too, there was this giant jump in support groups you could find online, because everyone was doing them online. And so you can find one that might be based in, it could be in the UK or New York or Vancouver, and you might find a support group for whatever it is you need support with, and there might be a very niche category, but there are some of those blessings of the internet. I know it's easy to talk about the negativity of what internet has done to our lives, but in the case of support groups, it's pretty powerful what's out there. If you don't necessarily have someone near you feel you can speak to, it's all available online.
Right. And a lot of professionals now are, now that they've switched to online, like I know some counselors, they've found that they prefer online, and so do the clients. So that's interesting.
And I know with addiction, I've had a couple of friends who felt, uncomfortable walking into rooms in their community or even doing the Zoom meetings in their community. So they do them in other provinces. And that was their door in. And now they're more comfortable in their own community as well. But they decided to try it out somewhere else where they knew they wouldn't know anyone. And it's been life-changing.
Yeah, it gets more people involved. Not afraid to be involved. Wisdom figures, it would be another possibility. Again, maybe it overlaps a bit if you're spiritual or religious, but could be the Buddha, or Dalai Lama is one of my favorites. He's an amazing character. Buddhist, the leader of Tibetan Buddhism. But there could be other wisdom figures. Could be a grandparent, someone in your circles that, I mentioned earlier episode about my good friend George, who died when he was 93, and he used to go talk to him regularly, and I'd take him grocery shopping, and he said to me, I had some relationship difficulties. This was years ago, and he said, well, Gary, sometimes things are not going to be very good. And he said, I went on a cruise and I met my first wife, and she passed away, and I went on another cruise and I met my second wife. And he said, so maybe you should take a cruise. So he's quite a character. But it was good practical. I didn't go on a cruise, but it's good practical advice.
Moving on, what are we talking about next? We've looked at themes, so how do we explore these themes in a way that's meaningful?
Yeah, I thought if we could continue with what we just did and invite the audience to try sitting down and identify maybe some of what we just mentioned, try to identify some sources of meaning in your life. And then secondly, are there some that are more important than others? And then thirdly, to see whether a source of meaning from early, if you've been around a bit, a source of meaning is not there anymore, or has changed. And the flip side of that, could you think of any new sources of meaning that might come up? Or new, old? To give you a short story of a good friend in Germany who was a psychoanalyst and a professor all his life. But when he was very young, he played violin. So he retired, this is over 10 years ago now, and one of his friends said, Willie, why don't you pick up your violin? He said, no, it's, 60 years ago, I'm not playing violin anymore. And his friend convinced him to try it. So he said, okay, he got it. I guess he borrowed a violin. And he played it a bit, and then he played it some more, and his friend gave him some music books, started playing Haydn. Anyway, make a longer story short, he joined up with several of his friends, and they're in a quartet, a string quartet, and they're performing just locally around, and he loves it. So he's got a new source of meaning that's making him feel really happy. So that's the idea. If you just let your imagination go, it might be something brand new that you say, wow, I think I might check that out, and just go find it, begin with it.
As we get closer to the end of the show today, how would you like to end off with the viewers at home?
Let's do a Tai Chi movement. And I think if someone's following all the episodes, we do repeat some of the movements, because the more you do the movements, the more you relax into the movement. So let's do the wave hands like a cloud again, which we did in one other episode, but that's, as I say, that's a good idea. Okay, so palms turned out, relax the shoulders, nice breath up to about shoulder height, turn over, float back down, and then you've got to go in front and cross your palms, flip them up, And just come in front of yourself here, like two mirrors, with the palms turned out, back over and down, 3 times. So cross, palms up, float up. Just feel like your arms are light and soft. Down, cross, float up, down. And then on the last one, take a nice breath and go back down to the side. Yeah.
That's great.
Great.
Do you start your day with Tai Chi?
Yes, usually I do. Yeah. If not in the morning, sometime during the day, but I try to do it in the morning.
And do you recommend people do it in whenever they have 5 minutes?
That's right. When you're starting out, a couple of minutes of this move or the one we did before with the wave, just up and down, breathing, even if it's for a couple of minutes, and you'll find it grows on you. That, maybe I'll do a couple more. If you start out with too rigid a structure, then it's sort of counter Tai Chi anyway, but if you start out with too rigid a structure, you might not meet it. But if you start out with something very small, you'll feel something pretty quick and then develop it from there. And if I can just quickly mention, we have this Tai Chi class, seated Tai Chi class at the Youth-Senior Center, Monday morning, 10 o'clock, free of charge.
And that's the youth center in St. Andrews, right by the fire hall, right behind the fire hall.
Right.
Okay, well, I look forward to checking that out as well. Thank you for sitting down again today, Gary. I look forward to this every week.
Thank you, Vicki. And thank you all for tuning in again to Pathways to Stillness. Look forward to seeing you soon.